recording is started, and then I will just be a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about. And then, one more question. Team, what team are you guys here?
The one
Team
without
two.
trash.
Has
Red
to be
one.
Red
Cowboys.
one. All
Me
right.
too.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. All right. So, firstly, noting that we're kind of walking out a little bit disjointed. Everybody's kind of all over the place at the moment. So, when part of teamwork and whatnot, right, is sticking together, especially depending on what comp you're on. Certain team compositions is perfectly fine to have everybody spread out across the map. Such as like if you're running dives or spam comps, which we can get into comps as needed. But currently we're running Reinhardt and Zarya, and they should, for the most part, in a lot of situations, be on top of each other, especially if you're looking to push in and take space. So I would say this is especially on Zarya here, right? Making sure that you're waiting on your team to group up and then go in. But then also just in general, communicate, right? Maybe do a countdown is a helpful communication tool. Is just say, okay, we're going in 3, 2, 1. That way everyone's on the same page and everyone can move at the same time. Yeah, and so that's really the main issue. And then Zarya ends up going down, and then yep, dead. Okay, Mercy goes for the res. Looks like yeah, that's good. Okay, so now let's start talking about team comps, I think, because noticing a little bit of an issue here. All right. So we are going to just hop right into talking about how team comps operate. I'm going to link over in the general chat of this server a picture that you all can look at real quick. So this is basically your rough team comp chart in Overwatch. So you all might be familiar with like what these team comps are, but we're gonna go a little bit into like how they operate and whatnot, and a little bit more into the mechanics of them. So just for anybody who's not on the same page, dive is just going to be your comp where you're running like Monkey Diva. Wrecking Ball also works with Dive, Tracer, Genji. Then you, with supports, you can run like an Ana, Zenyatta. Mercy, right, works. So characters that can move around really fast, right? That's your Dive. Brawl, that's your fast, tanky, brawly composition. So these guys are going to be like your Reinhardt Zarya, your Lucio, Moira, Reaper, May type of deal. Then spam is your far distance slow composition. That's going to be like your Orisa Sigma, your, let's see, what else is that going to be? That's going to be like your snipers, your Hanzo, your Junkrat. Then for your supports, you're going to have something along the lines of Mercy, Zen, or Baptiste, right? So that's your rough compositions, right? And most compositions that have been in the game have been some variation of those. Um, if you have 4 or more characters of a comp, you make up that composition. So if you have 4 brawl characters, your brawl comp. If you have 3 brawl characters, and then 3 spam characters, well then you're just kind of a brawly spam hybrid. And then that gets into hybrid comp, where a hybrid is just kind of the in between of anything, right? Where you're kind of running nothing in particular. Now, hybrid comp in a ranked setting typically is inherently negative, because it just means you're kind of running like a deathmatchy thing. No one's really running anything in particular. But it's not always the case. It's not inherently a negative, as hybrid can be good if it's an actual composition, such as I would call maybe like a double bubble, if you guys have heard of that, a Monkey Zarya, more of a hybrid. And then typically they just play kind of a little bit more split. Everyone's doing their own thing if you're playing it kind of the deathmatchy way. So that's all the different comps. Now let's talk about how do they actually play. Now, dive very standard. The dive pretty much just plays how all the other comps play, but it's really just they start off far away, then they dive in close. That's what's unique about them. Then they're going to start off slowly with their pacing, and then get faster and faster with opportunities and with kills and with other advantages, right? With ultimates, etc. That's very standard. Now, brawl and spam is where we're really looking at for this specific instance, as well as just in general, because this is really important. Spam comps, because they are long ranged characters, they want to play at a long range and they want to take the fight slow, right? Because the further away you play and the longer the fight drags out, the more time you have to shoot them and they can't shoot back at you. Brawl, on the other hand, is the complete opposite of that. They are made up of close ranged characters, and because they're close range, they can't do anything out of range, and therefore they want to take the fight pacing fast so that they can do things and not be spammed out, right? And not just have them shoot at you from a distance. So that is going to be how those comps want to operate. So when you're running like kind of hybrids, when you're kind of in between, usually brawl and spam don't work well together, because if you're running like a half brawl, half spam, you're working against yourself. It's kind of going in the opposite direction, because half your team wants to go and half your team wants to sit back, right? That sort of idea. So let's go and look at the game that we're currently in, and let's look at their composition. So does anybody care to guess, like, what would you say that the enemy team is on?
What do you mean by that?
Mhm.
Like their comp name?
Yes. What is what
Bunker?
come?
Bunker?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. They'd be bunker just being another name for spam, right? It's one of those variants, right? I would say if you're saying bunker, that's more so like a stationary spam, but that's, it's just the semantics of it. But yes, they're on a spam comp here. What comp are you guys on?
I wasn't in this match, but they're running Rush, right?
Yeah, they're
Not
on a
really. They don't have a Lucio,
Like a
but
mm,
hybrid, because it's
yeah.
kind of like spam and some dive.
Yeah, I would say you guys are on mostly a brawl. I wouldn't say that we're on a dive at all here. So we can just walk through this. So note that each character is going to also work at varying levels well in each comp, right? So they're going to be either good or bad in each different comp, and they can be good at multiple comps. So Mercy is bad in a brawl because she does not do very much burst healing, and Brawl needs burst healing, but she is good in a spam and a dive, right? So Mercy you would call a spam and a dive character. A Reinhardt is good in a brawl. Junkrat is good in he's mostly spam, but he's good in a brawl as well, right? Genji, he's good in a brawl and best in a dive, but he's good in both, right? Zarya is brawl. Ana is brawl and dive, right? So I wouldn't really call us a dive comp, because really you're working with like what you'd be basing the dive around one single Genji who's going in, right? So you have a lot of characters who can support a dive, but you only have one character who's actually diving. So it's not a dive comp. Not really. I would say it's not really a spam comp, right? Even though you have some spam characters, you only have Mercy and Junkrat, and that's it, right? But I would say it's a brawl comp because you have Reinhardt, Junkrat, Genji, Ana, Zarya, who all work in Brawl, right? So you guys, for all intents and purposes, are Brawl. So let's look at kind of how we have approached this fight, right? How our aggression and positioning to them, right? So we basically just end up sitting around for most of this, pretty much, if you look from the start of the fight. So we can start here. Oh, 1 second. Apologies. I had a baby sister run into the room, crying and screaming, but we're good now. All right. So we can kind of basically start here, kind of near the start of the fight, right? Our objective should be to get on top, because they are spam, we are brawl. Our objective should be to run on and get on top of them as soon as possible, because brawl in this situation, brawl has the massive advantage if you get on top of them, and spam has a massive advantage if they can tippy-toe and dance away from you guys. So we can fast forwards here. Okay, we're 5 seconds forwards. Not much movement. 5 seconds forwards, that's 10 seconds. Not much movement. We're still in the same place. 5 seconds forwards, okay, still in the same place. 5 seconds forwards. All right, we're moving a little bit. But in that time we'd already lost a character, and we're moving forwards, but we're still on top of them. So we're 20 seconds into this fight, or 20 seconds into kind of where we're staring at each other, and we're still staring at each other. Right, we're not going in. Okay, we're going 5 4 seconds forwards, and we're still not moving in. Right, we're still kind of staring at each other. And then we lose both of our supports. Now, also noting not just off of so we're 25 seconds in, noting positioning wise, Reinhardt, right? You probably want to be up in the front. So far you're the one who wants to lead the charge. You want to be up in the front, being the one pushing, and so far it's looked like one of the main reasons why we're sitting around is because you're not leading that, right? So as the main tank, you kind of have that call of, hey, we're pushing now. So I would recommend, right, push forwards, try to do it earlier in the fight, call it out, right? Say, okay, we're going in 3 2 1, we're going in. That sort of idea, because so far we've been largely sitting behind our team, and then also just kind of sitting around. And then also on a Mercy, did we get pulled there? Is that what happened? Yeah, okay, you both got pulled into it. Unfortunate. Okay, so okay, so we were roughly right here, right? 25 seconds. Now the fight's pretty much lost, but we kind of never, throughout the entire fight, never got on top of them, right? And that's an issue. Because that's just majorly not how we want to be playing, right? We already discussed that. It's playing in, not only is it playing at our disadvantage, it's playing into their advantage. All right, so fight ends up being over. Okay, restart. Let's watch the next one. Okay. Additionally, if you're looking to put your comp together on a brawl, you could, I'd say maybe like the one character that stands out a little bit is the Mercy. Now, I'm not sure on your character pools whatsoever, and it's not a massive deal because it's one character. But whenever possible, like I was mentioning before, try to keep your comp cohesive, just because that means that you guys are going to all be on the same page, whereas in this situation, Mercy just kind of does that little bit of a pullback into the direction that you're not wanting to go, being the slow methodical character that when your team wants to be pushing hard. So like I said, not a major issue, especially like if you're just a Mercy player, and it's just one character, but it'd become much more big of a deal if you had multiple characters on your team that were pulling back in the opposite direction. So it's just a comment. Okay, nice, we got a pick. Alright, so we're going in. Here we end up going for the blade, but we're 5% off of nano, unfortunately. We see that they're all purple. You're also low HP. Might wait on just an extra second, Genji. Because yeah, I mean, wouldn't say that there's a massive need to rush the ultimate, especially if you notice that you're this low. It's possible that you didn't see that your Ana didn't have it yet, possibly because there's a miscommunication, but just make sure you're pressing tab. Generally, all of you should be pressing tab very frequently. This gives you a lot of information. I recommend at a very minimum once between every single fight, right? Because that gives you information on, did they swap characters? Did we swap characters, right? We just discussed how important team compositions are. And then also gives you info on what ultimates you guys have. So here, Genji just goes in when Ana's 5% away. That's like one single shot that Ana needs to land on anybody. And then that means that you're also gonna get healed up, because right now you're like 1 HP. So do we get stuff with it? I'm not saying you won't. Yeah, we do get healed up after it. That's good. Okay, very nice. Oh, though you do forget about the Baptiste. Alright, keep your eye out for that. Alright.
Objective lost. Stop the payload.
Engaging fortifications.
Okay. Do note once again that we're kind of just chilling out a little bit, which just gives them a lot of time to spam us. As of the current moment, you only really need one person to be sitting cart, right? When it comes to pushing cart, you only ever need one person on cart unless the fight is happening around cart. Or the only time you'd ever add an extra people to cart is like if you're right very close to capping and you think you can cap before they're able to touch again, right? And that's the other time, because otherwise, no matter what, it's always going to take you 2 fights to win, right? It can be less if you stagger them, and it can be more if they win fights. But you're always gonna have kind of 2 fights, right? The first fight happens around this bend, somewhere around here, right? Second one happens around this last bridge, right? Just every single time, on every escort, right? Any payload part of any map, usually it's going to be 2 fights. So this doesn't change whether or not you have 1 person or 5 people on cart. Therefore, rather than sitting around, we probably want to be using that last 10-15 seconds to be pushing them on high ground, pushing the tanks on the low ground, something of that sort. Again, noting that you guys are all very spread across the map. When you're running a brawl comp, typically you guys want to be on top of each other. This is because when you're running a brawl comp, one of the core kind of you're basically running at people, right? And when you're running at people, you want to have as much tanking as possible, as much beefiness as possible, because they're going to shoot at you while you're running at them, obviously. So when we're spread across the map, we're not able to do an organized run at them together. If Junkrat's are all the way on the left and Zarya's all the way on the right, then how are you guys all going to coordinatedly sprint at them at the same time? And you're going to have split resources where now you don't have as many abilities and ultimates and health pools to help tank all the damage that's coming through. So overall, um, brawl, when you're running a brawl, you want to stay together and stay on top of each other. Now, like I said previously, that does become slightly different depending on your comp. Dive is going to be a lot more spread out, right? You can just kind of everybody can be on their all over the place, right? In certain types of spams, then yeah, everyone might be around the map, right? Everyone's doing their own thing. And then additionally, sometimes in like hybrid compositions, right? Or not, sorry, most of the time in hybrid compositions, if you're kind of playing deathmatchy, then everyone's all over the map doing their own thing. But here we're playing as if we're kind of on the hybrid, right? And that's not how you want to play when you're on Brawl. And then it looks like that kills Zarya, right? And then that gets Zarya picked, so you just watch being off on your own. Alright, very nice. Like that you're using your ults fast there. Though, do note that if you have 2 other ultimates as options, you might want to wait, because now this is gonna keep on putting your Genji and your Ana's not. So you won the fight, right? Like it's not. Sorry, I'm interrupting myself there. But you guys won the fight. It's not a major deal. But now we're just gonna have our Genji and our Ana ultimates completely out of sync once again. Whereas if we have other ultimates, then maybe we can win the fight out of those other ultimates, and then not need to use on ult, and then we can kind of just save it for the next blade, and then we have blade for the next fight. So, or nano blade for the next fight. So again, not a massive thing, maybe a slight efficiency thing that you guys can look to do. Okay. Mercy's a little bit slow to go join them on high ground. Additionally, we're not really noticing when Genji's dead over there. And then we let his body expire while we have res. So make sure, Mercy, that you're being aware of your surroundings and paying attention, because awareness in general is just very important for everybody to have. And then additionally, that's something any of you can be calling out as well. It's just like, the DPS can say, hey, we're on a high ground, help out, right? Or Genji can be saying, I'm dead, Mercy, can you res me, please? Right, that sort of idea. And then that way you guys are all helping each other out when you're a little bit off.
Cease your resistance.
Alright, so in that fight, firstly we started off down a... Let's analyze that a little bit. Okay, so a couple things. Firstly, note that we are starting off the fight once again very spread out. Not sure... Zarya, make sure you're pushing much further forwards, just because your range on Zarya is not a long range. You're a brawl character, you're a very close range character, because what you want to be working with is your left click, right? That's where you get your primary value on Zarya, is beaming people down with your left click. It's your primary fire. It's how you're going to want to be shooting most of the time. Therefore, you want to be pushing up within range. You're also not going to get any personal bubble value if you're sitting across the map, and you're also not going to be able to get very much tanking value sitting across the map from your team. So once again, you play very split up from your team. So we sit all the way back here when our whole team is pushing all the way up to the doorways. And then here Reinhardt pushes forwards, but Junkrat's all the way back, and we're down our Genji and Zarya's all the way back. So Reinhardt, I'd say you're doing what you should be doing here, but like the whole team's lagging behind, which is a big serious issue. So once again, group up, make sure everyone's together. Not a non-issue if you're on a different comp, but it's a major thing when you're here on this brawl.
Cease your resistance.
Okay, now McCree flanks, gets up behind you guys. Yeah, in general, we just want to be aware of that and watching for it, because I think he kills 2 of your teammates. Yeah, almost 3 of your teammates. Want to be careful, make sure that we're looking to take cover. For example, like this is just cover as an idea. Generally speaking, good positioning is the usage of cover. Bad positioning is the absence of cover, where you don't have anything to work with. And there's cover all over the place, right? So if for example, if we're standing right here, then it takes us to get to the nearest form of cover to from that top right high ground, where it's going to take us like 1, 2, right, 2.5 seconds, and then in that time we die, right? It just takes us too long. Whereas if we were already standing near this, well then we just do this and it takes us half a second, right? Which is much faster, and it's going to keep us alive in a lot of situations. And there's cover all over the map, right? There's cover, the payload access cover, random objects, you have walls and random little pillars and doorways, right, that act as cover. High grounds all act as cover, right? They can see you. Now they can't when you back up away from the ledge. So there's cover all over the place, and we just want to make sure that you are looking to use it. Besides that, yeah, we try to use Junkrat Tire. Doesn't get a whole lot. We don't have the nano. Okay. Yeah. No Tony. Now we're not doing a one-on-one here, so I'm not gonna focus too much on any individuals. But it's now 3 minutes ish into the game, right? A little bit over 3 minutes in the game, and we're getting grab, which just demonstrates that there's been a little bit of lack of damage. Now that could have to do with like that last fight in particular, where we're just sitting very far back. That could be a major factor in that. So just make sure you're looking to get in there and do things. All right.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay. Once again, very not on the same page. Zarya, you should pretty much be following your Reinhardt around, right? You should be unless there's the off situation, right, where you go on off angles. Off angles, noting for just all of you, when you're defining an off angle, there's a difference between an off angle and a flank, right? So, for example, if we are looking to do something like I don't know, I don't even think there is an off angle in this room. An off angle would be something like trying to think of an example here. Like, for example, if we are coming up on high ground and we decide to just take a different angle, right? It's usually very fast, very safe from the main angle. So if our team is all looking to come up and go down this way, then we can just take the same amount of time and come over here and shoot, right? And then we can get back to our team pretty fast, pretty safe, pretty easily. Now I wouldn't say there's a great off-angle example here to be looking at. Maybe I could find somewhere else that's better, but that's off-angle. Now, flanks usually are much longer. Think about how long would it take for Zarya to get all the way around and in with Reinhardt. If he's in the middle of a fight, that's going to take him a lot longer. It's also at the same time going to additionally be a lot less safe because you're isolating yourself, you're off on your own, right? So, and then this can just mean that you're again not doing very much. So here, um, not only are you going to be just stuck spamming right clicks in there the whole time and then not really accomplishing a ton, you're also not going to be able to give bubbles to anybody, and you're not going to be able to assist with tanking. Typically, like I said, you're going to want to stick with your Reinhardt. Now, if you are think that main is the better option, which I wouldn't say it's the better option here, definitely right side is the better option because it gets you to them faster with more cover. If you think main was the better option here, then you can communicate it, right, and say, Reinhardt, let's go this way, right?
I
So,
think
hmm?
at this point, I was like really telling them that we shouldn't go mid because of their bastions like holding down sides there. So I think we were like yelling to each other, just go through castle and like
Mm.
where Genji is.
Yes, that's exactly what you want to be doing, right? Because yeah, like I said, it gives you a lot more cover, gets you to them sooner, when cart's this close to the end. Okay. Once again, okay, so now we're going up top, but now we're going kind of through this again. We went through castle, but then we're now it looks like we're about to go drop and go down main. Which just notice the very large lack of cover here. There's not a whole lot, right? Um, so whenever you have the option, take the route that does not have cover. Now, if cart is over here and you have to push cart up this way, then you have to push cart up this way. You have to go with it. But if cart's already down here and they're already down here, then why would we come up this way when we could come up through castle or come through right side and be immediately on top of them with just really fast, lot of cover, right? So here we're just again kind of going down this wrong pathing. Okay, and then it looks like we might be hesitating, but you also just notice the lack in aggression, how we're sitting around, and then notice every single time we ever take any time to poke, we're always the team who's losing the poke war. We're always getting picked. That's not because you guys are bad, that's because of the compositions, right? So it's, Genji's not dying here just because Genji's a bad character, or sorry, not, or Genji's, a bad player. He's dying because our composition is not built to sit and we're sitting, right? So that's the issue currently. Oh, almost. Maybe you could, like, if some in this situation, communicate for somebody to like peek you up on the high ground so you can get the Genji back, something along those lines. Make sure that everybody on the team is when somebody dies and you have a mercy, everybody on the team should be assisting with the res. Don't assume that's just on the mercy unless you're in the middle of a fight and you have other things that are occupying your thoughts. Right now this is in between a fight and really there shouldn't be a ton else that's streaming through your mind, right? Because you're in between a fight, right? Nothing's immediately grabbing at your attention. So therefore, everybody help out the res, protect her, help the mercy get to the body, right? Okay, and then now, oh no, we're good.
Vide mal suyo!
Okay, so even within this, notice, right, Reinhardt and Zarya are still split up, not on top of each other. Junkrat's kind of up here doing his spammy thing, which isn't terrible. Junkrat's, I would say that the tanks being together is much more important here. But I think it's just generally everybody's all over the place, right? Which is a massive issue, right? Reinhardt's pushing McCree. This should be being like, I would blah, 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 words. Um, your whole team should now be looking at McCree if you're communicating this. If you're saying, "Hey guys, McCree's underneath you. Look down. Look, turn around. McCree's underneath." Literally everybody on your team should be turning around and looking underneath, right? So, um, in general, I want to emphasize the point that teamwork, when it comes to you guys operating well as a team, is like 65% based around communication and based around you guys talking to each other. That's the vast majority of what teamwork is, right? When you say teamwork, communication is a synonym, right? And then there's some other things that go into it, like making sure you're just on the same page, right? Like positioning near each other, like we've been talking about. But here, this is just another example of just make sure you're communicating it, because nobody looks at McCree, right? Baptiste goes down to look at or Baptiste doesn't notice the McCree's there. Never mind, right? So that means that either Baptiste isn't hearing it or nobody's calling it, right? Which is an issue. So communication, everybody call it. Everybody make sure you're paying attention. Okay, still spread out. All right. Still taking the fight very, very slow, right? This is all one long extended fight currently. Okay, so now we're engaging. Issue is that half of our team is down here. How did you guys end up down there? We had Zarya who's on the low ground. Wait, so how did Zarya get down there? Right, so Zarya's on the low ground because Zarya's up top and then got pushed off because Zarya's alone, right, which is an issue. So Zarya gets pushed off, right, so now Zarya's alone. And then you guys, Junkrat falls off on accident and the Mercy drops off to heal Zarya, right? So now half of your team's missing. So once again, just making sure we're sticking together to begin with. So then Genji goes in with his ultimate. This is honestly not a bad time whatsoever to be ulting. It's good. Genji Blade so far been looking pretty decent. Almost. Just know when to pull back, know when to deflect if you're feeling like you're under pressure. All right.
Огонь по готовности!
Vine bal sou yo!
Okay. So we come in. We use 4. They used 1. So in this situation, this seems a little bit like an over ultimate, not because all of the ults happen at the same time. So it's not that you overult like because you all ult after the fight's already won. All of you ult when the fight's still iffy, right? But the problem comes into play because we're ulting all at the same time, right? And this hopefully wants to be communicated slightly better. So when it comes to communication and teamwork, one of the bigger parts of communication is the kind of this category where of the in between communication, in between fight communication of ult tracking and ult planning. Do you guys currently have an ult tracker or ult planner?
We have one right now.
Okay, cool. Both of them?
No, we don't.
No,
No,
you
we
don't.
don't.
Okay.
No, no.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. Or sorry, not perfectly fine, but perfectly expected out of like no offense, but like a plat team, right? It's not something that I was expecting going into it, right? But in any case, I would highly recommend designating an ult tracker and an ult planner, right? So ult tracking, just again for those who, some of you might know what this is, some of you might not. So just again to clarify what it is, ult tracking is basically guesstimating which ultimates they're going to have for the upcoming fight, and then ult planning is making sure that you are coordinating your ultimates effectively for the next fight. And both of these are very important. So why don't I walk through them and how you guys should do it, because it's a useful skill honestly for anybody to know how to do, but it's in a team environment. It's pretty much, it's going to give you such a massive advantage in fights and whatnot because if you're doing this in between every single fight of the game, in every single game that you're in, then you have much more communication, much more teamwork, much more planning, and you're going to have a massive advantage against all of the other teams. So let's go into it. I'll talk about how to do it, and then after that, we can maybe discuss a little bit more on it. But yeah, how to do it. So firstly, it's really a 3-step process, and in between a fight, you're going to have roughly 15-20 seconds to work with. Now, you guys have been sitting around a little bit longer than that, which is an issue, but if you're going in and engaging as soon as you all group up, you should have at least like 15-20 seconds to talk about stuff. So, as soon as the fight ends, as soon as it ends, and sometimes even like right before it ends, if you see that like you're losing and it's a very heavy disadvantage or not heavy disadvantage, let's just say right as you leave, not necessarily after the last person's died, but as you lose, right? Then you can start talking about this stuff. It's a 3-step process, like I said. You start off with the ult tracking because you need to know what ults they have before you start making your plan. So, ult tracking basically, like I said, is a guesstimation of what they have. You're going to pull up your tab because this will tell you it'll give you basically give you a lot of information, but it'll just let you walk through a lot easier. It'll let you see what characters they have, did they make any swaps, etc. So you scan their team comp. We're gonna use the team 1 on the top left here for our walkthrough. Since I can't press tab and the replay. You're going to scan through their comp, go left to right, and you're going to think to yourself, all right, in the last fight, I saw or heard that they used Bongo, Flux, and Bastional, right? They used all 3 of those. So since they just used it, they're not going to have it for this fight, right? Maybe they're like 30%, but they don't have it. So it's a non-issue. Now, they just swapped from Soldier to McCree, so therefore, McCree also is fresh. He doesn't have his ultimate, so that's 4 crossed off, 4 that they do not have. Now you might have missed it because maybe you were dead, maybe you weren't paying attention, you didn't see it, you didn't hear it. So you ask your team, "I didn't catch Baptiste or Brig," or you can just say like, "Do you guys see Bap or Brig?" And your team says, yes, they used Briggle. So now, through a process of elimination, through crossing off all of the other options, you have now found out that they have BAP ult for the next fight, right? So that is ult tracking. Now, if you just did that, it would almost be worthless. It gets you very little value if you're not following it up with this next step, and that is ult countering. So, knowing what ults they have is handy, but if you're not doing anything to actually stop them, then really what was the point? What was the point of saying they have that ultimate if we're not going to think through something to do against it? So, ult countering is the next step to that. This one is basically you're just going to think through what ultimates did I just say they have, right? And then what can we do to stop them? Some ultimates, not really much you need to worry about, right? Like if they have Briggle, what are you gonna? Is there a counter to Briggle? Are you really gonna be like, oh, we're gonna come in and we're gonna do this to stop Briggle? No, not really, not usually, not a massive deal. But bigger ultimates or bigger ultimate combos, that's where you want to have a plan, right? So for example, somewhere where you might want to have a plan is like a Nano Blade, right? Nano Blade, you want to have a plan. Grav Dragon, want to have a plan, right? Pretty much anything with Grav, anything with Flux, right? In a lot of situations, you want to have a plan. And therefore, you want to think it through. So, when looking to counter them, you can think through, okay, we can use certain ultimates. I mean, everything is really going to be unique, right? It's going to depend on what you're working with, but let me give you examples, right? Something that people do not think through whatsoever when it comes to Nanoblade, right, is the fact that they'll think, okay, we don't have a defensive ultimate. Guess we died a Nanoblade, right? I guess that's it. But the thing is that basically a third of the ultimates in the game counter Nanoblade, right? You can think through just a third of the ultimates and they counter it, right? So think through, like, just in this game alone, right? We have Sigma. Sigma Flux counters Nanoblade, right? High Noon to a certain extent, especially if you're far enough away, can counter Nano Blade because you can kind of just put him under pressure and make it so he can't get on you guys, right? You can use Battle Lamp for Nano Blade. You can rally, and then that makes it a lot harder for Genji to be able to do things with Nano Blade if everybody has armor. It takes him an extra couple of slices. You additionally can shatter the Nano Blade. You can tire one shots Nano Blade. You can grab the Nano Blade, right? Using one ultimate for two ultimates. Cha-ching, right? That's going to be really good in a lot of cases. So there's a lot of ultimates to stop Nano Blade, and people really don't think through that fact. So, um, think through when you're looking to counter said ultimates. What can we actually do? What can we do to stop them? Right? Call it out. Communicate it, and that way your team is all on the same page of what we're looking to do in the fight to stop said ultimate and instead of just letting Nanoblade rip through all of you guys, right? Um, then the third step in this is ult planning. Now, these ult planning and ult tracking aren't directly related, but they do kind of have impacts on each other. But ult planning is basically just saying, hey, we're gonna come in and we're gonna use these ultimates, and this is the plan for the fight, right? And if you go in without a plan for the fight, then everybody's just doing their own thing. Everyone's playing deathmatch, everybody's going in, and then again, that's just ranked. That's just quick play plus not competitive team play where communication is is actually doing things. So planning, right? You don't always have to stick 100% to the plan, and one person doesn't have to call out the plan every single time. Same thing with ult tracking. Everybody can chip in to help out with ult tracking, but one person doing, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but one person doing it helps keep you guys on track and means that you kind of make it so that it's easier to, because then not everybody has to be thinking through it. You just have one person thinking through it. So in any case, sorry, back to ult tracking, right? Or sorry, ult planning. Sorry, I'm confusing myself there. Ult planning, how that usually works is you want to make sure that the objective of it is to not over ult and combo your ultimates effectively, right? Overulting, right, is just using too many ultimates. It's when you go into a fight and use too many. So this fight, for example, we come in and we used 4 ultimates, and they used two ultimates, and then one was like early on the fight. So we're now down 2 ultimates. What does that mean for the next fight?
Wait, what was the question?
Yeah. We're currently we overulted during this fight. We just used 4. They used 2. What does that mean for our next fight?
We're not gonna have ults to fight it.
Yeah, we're not gonna have ults. We're gonna be at a disadvantage. They probably win the next fight, right? So, therefore, we want to try to stop over ulting. We also want to look to combo, like I said, our ultimates effectively. So, when you're coming into a fight, you want to look at, okay, what ultimates can we combo effectively? And then calling that out, right? So, for example, on our team, you could think through a couple different combos. You can grab Tire, you can grab Blade. You want to make sure that when you're blading, you have Mercy damage boosting it. Additionally, and then besides that, I would probably say that that's your basic generic combos. Don't really think that you have any other really big combos, so then most of the rest would just be communicating which ones you're using. So, for example, rather than using everything, right, or 4 ultimates this fight, you could, at the very beginning of the fight, say, okay, we're going to come in and we're going to use Grab Blade, and then if we need it, then we can also Tire, or if we need it, then we can also Bapple, right? Note that when you're calling out ultimates, you can put conditions on it. So you might have just heard me saying if we need it. So that means that essentially you'd be coming in, you'd say, okay, we're gonna use our plan is to use Grav Blade, and then if things hit the fan, right, and things aren't going our way, then we can still have other ultimates to use, right? We can use our Bapple, so rather than saying okay, the Grav Blade didn't work, let's use everything else, right? Rather than that, you have the designated backup ultimate or the designated 2 backup ultimates, right? You can say, okay, we're gonna come into this fight and we're going to use our Grav Blade, and then let's say, for example, they have flux or whatever, and then you say if they use flux, we use beat, right? So you put a condition on that, right? That's part of the old countering as well, right? But it's I'm just demonstrating the concept, the idea of the conditions, right? Of you put a condition on an ultimate, so we're gonna use these ultimates, and then we maybe use these ultimates, but then we probably don't want to be using 4. Now, is it wrong to always use 4 ultimates? No, right? It's not always wrong to use 4 ultimates. Really, if they use 4 ultimates, then it's no issue at all, because then you're even if they use 4 ultimates. If they use 5 ultimates, you might even want to one up them and do 6 ultimates, right? But it really becomes an issue if you are using many more ultimates than they are, right? That's where it becomes an issue, and where you don't want to be using as many, right? So that's your rough list. I would probably recommend split that between 2 different characters. Now, or sorry, 2 different players on your team. Now you can, like, after we're done our session, you guys go and do your scrims or whatever your practices, whatever you guys do for that. You can just test it out, see like, okay, who firstly wants to try it, secondly, who's good at it, right? Like maybe rotate it between a couple people, try it out for like give people turns, try it out on them and see okay, who seems to be doing decent with these different roles and responsibilities. And then you can decide from there. But in general, just note that typically in team environments at higher ranks, the main tank is the one who does the planning. As in a lot of cases, they lead the engagement. They're the ones going in first. But that's not necessary. That's not an end all be all statement. And then also the main support is going to be the one who does the ult tracking and the and the ult countering, right? Or really the countering can be done by either or, right? And then just to define those two, main support is going to be like your Mercy Lucio player ish, and then your main tank is obviously, I think main tank is very common uh phrasing by now, so everybody knows what that means. So that is about it. Um, Now let's talk through a little bit of application, because that might have just seemed like a whole heck of a lot of stuff, right? That probably was just very overwhelming, right? It's a lot of information, and that's on top of all the other things that I was saying as well. Right, that's a lot to handle. So let's discuss that for a second. So when it comes to applying the things we're talking about, you guys are going to look to apply it the exact same way that you apply anything that you work on, and that, like, in game or out of game, and that is that while you're playing, while you're scrimming, you're going to actively make sure you're focusing and working on the things you're trying to work on. That means you're not going to autopilot. You're not going to just play to play. And you're contrary to popular belief, not going to all just purely play to win. As when you purely play to win, that leads to stagnation where you don't really go anywhere. Whereas when you play to improve, then you guys actually go places and you win more. Now, what that looks like within your gameplay is, for example, let's take ult tracking, right? What that looks like is you're going to pick out the thing you want to work on, and you're going to make sure it would kind of look something like this. We're going ult track, ult track, ult track, ult track, ult track, ult track, right? Where you're giving yourself a constant stream of reminders to think about, pay attention to ults, what's happening, making sure you're reminding yourself in between fights to do it, right? And when you remind yourself to do it, you're probably going to be more likely to do it. And the more you do it, the more you practice you get, the better you'll be at it. And therefore, you'll form it as a positive habit over time. Once it forms as a positive habit, then you can look for, then you don't need to put as much time and effort into it, because it'll just come naturally now. You'll just do it after every fight. It's not something you have to actively put extra attention into. Then you can move on to something else to work on, and then you're good, right? Now, I would recommend, don't try to do everything all at once. We just named, so far, I don't know, 10 different concepts that you guys are going to work on, and we're not even through the session yet. We're only halfway through. So there's going to be a lot of things. Don't try to do everything at once. Focus on one category of things, or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category. Now, to clarify on some areas, I guess before I clarify on those areas, does anybody have any questions on that? That all makes sense? And just general checkup as well, because we've talked about a lot of concepts so far. Is everything making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, glad to hear that. All right. So
Yes.
to continue then, um, when it comes to working on stuff, note that you can work on multiple things as long as they're not directly overlapping. So what I mean by that is that you can have parts of your gameplay that overlap continuously and parts of your gameplay that have no overlapping. So, for example, um, if you guys need to work on your positioning as well as your ult tracking, right? So let's just say, for example, let's just take Reinhardt, right? Reinhardt and Zarya. You guys want to work on playing as a team, sticking together, but then you also want to work on at the same time you want to work on ult planning, right? Um, you don't necessarily in some cases you might look at that and think, okay, well that's too much, that's too overwhelming. But in a lot of cases, those aren't overlapping at all, right? Your positioning isn't going to be happening in between fights as much. It's going to be happening a lot during fights or right at the start of fights, whereas ult planning happens in the in between fashion, right? So there's not nearly as much overlap. Whereas if you were to try to work on your positioning as well as your awareness, as well as your ability usage, as well as your then it becomes too much and it's all overlapping with each other, and it's not going to work out, right? Because you use those things constantly. Now, another good example is ultimate usage, right? Ultimates, generally, you're only using your ultimate, what, like once every 2 minutes or so, right? You're not using it all the time, whereas something like positioning, you're using all the time. So, those two can be fine to practice at the same time because you only need to think about ultimate usage for the 10 seconds that you're using it, and then the rest of the time you can think about positioning, right? But again, don't try to do ultimate usage, positioning, awareness, ult tracking, right? Because that's just too much. It's not going to work out, right? So, I might pick an objective as a team, but then also you guys can have your you guys can have a team objective, but then also individual objectives, right? So if you pick out ult trackers and ult planners, you can have those guys focusing on that, but then also as a team focusing on sticking together, right? Or as a team focusing on engaging sooner as a brawl, right? That sort of idea. So once again, does that make sense? I'm assuming yes then.
Yes. Yeah.
If no objections.
Dein Schutzengel ist da. Routing navigation systems to defense.
You guys got a little too ahead of yourselves. Oh no, are they all? All right. Make sure you're staying on cart. We got half our team pushed a little too far. Make sure sticking until we can, because then that gives them an entire recontest.
30 seconds remaining.
Hammer down!
The payload has reached the checkpoint. Der Kampf ist noch nicht vorbei.
So note, for example, here that the soldier pick does pull back a little bit on the comp even more because now soldier is, I think we were before in Genji, and Genji's brawl and dive, and soldier is pretty much, he's a very flexible character, but for the most part he's spam, right? That's his best comp. So therefore that is another kind of pullback on your comp. So now if we look at the comp, right, we're even more split where we're on Reinhardt, who's brawl, Zara, who's brawl, and then we have Bap, who's brawl slash spam, so he's in the middle. Junk, who's mostly spam but brawl, so brawl slash spam, who's again in the middle. And then you have Mercy, who's spam, and Soldier, who's spam. So now you're basically split right down the middle, half and half. And as we discussed before, a brawl spam hybrid is probably one of the worst comps you could get in the game because it's just inherently pulling itself apart. It's inherently pulling itself in opposite directions. Every character is wanting to do the opposite thing. Reinhardt and Zarya are going to want to sprint in, while Soldier and Mercy sit back, and then therefore they have much less help and protection as they're running in. So it just becomes a big issue. Additionally, we're swapping the Soldier on third point, which is a much more brawly point. Soldiers honestly wouldn't be that bad. Especially on second point where there's a lot more high grounds, a lot more open space. But third point is much more brawly. This is much more close quarters, enclosed, and that makes it much better for a brawl.
Seconds remaining.
Dein Schutzengel ist da.
Videbal suyo!
Alright,
Das Universum singt vor mir!
I think that we're gonna discuss this mainly for Reinhardt's benefit, but then also because I think that this can help the whole team out. Now, this is primarily a main tank concept, but like I said, this is something that can be applied to every other character. So it can be pretty much just as good for you guys. So we'll cover it. And this is the concept of aggression scaling. So the concept of aggression scaling is basically thinking to yourself of your own personal, but maybe even as well as a team setting, but your own personal aggression as if it were on a scale, right? And at 0% you have passive, 100% you have aggressive, and at 50% you have your neutral, right? You're just 50% is usually where you're starting off every single fight because you're coming in and nothing's really different, right? So, you in general along this scale are going to adjust upwards with advantages and with opportunities, and downwards with disadvantages and with a lack of resources. So things that make up, well, let me define those for you, right? Advantages are going to be things like being up teammates, right? You guys, or I guess being up kills is more accurate, right? So, for example, let's say you're at 50% and then you get a kill. Now you're maybe at 60%, right? And that is not just for you, but pretty much for the whole team, right? You're getting the whole team is getting more aggressive. Then you get 2 kills. Now you're up to 70, 3 kills, 80, etc., etc. Disadvantages is the same thing, but now if you lose characters, you're gonna go. You have 50%. You lose a teammate. Now you're down to 40%, right? Losing a teammate, nope, does not mean that you immediately back out of the fight. It's not a lost fight. Now, if you didn't even engage in the fight, then you can wait back because you don't need to go in if you're at a disadvantage. But if you're already in the middle of the fight, you don't want to just let them win for free, right? Which is a little bit what we're doing here, where we actually were only down one character and we had other advantages, and we kind of pulled back really far. I would probably say unnecessarily, which we will discuss in a moment. So moving on, right? There's also a lot of other things that go into whether or not you're winning or losing fight, not just kills, and that is going to be things such as advantages and disadvantages would be things such as like which team has better positioning, which team has more ultimates, more abilities, more health, closer spawns, the high ground, etc. So therefore, for example, if we are down 2 people, but their entire team is 1 HP, well, that might still be winnable, right? You might be able to still do something about that. But if you are down 2 people, but you have no additional advantage, then that's a lost fight at that point, right? So, just know that those are other advantages and disadvantages that affect the game. Then opportunities are things such as you see somebody who you can go and kill, right? Somebody's low, somebody's out of position, etc. Right? There's gonna be some other examples of opportunities. And then lack of resources, your own personal resources. You have team resources, but also personal resources. So as like for example, in Reinhardt, your resources are going to be your health bar, your shield health, and your abilities, right? If you do not have them, if you do not have your health, you can't get aggro, right? Like if you don't have health to work with, you just cannot push or else you die, right? That's as simple as that. So you'd have to lower it if you're down those resources. Now, in general, though, there's a couple of things to note within aggression scaling. Note that this is all going to be very fluctuant. It's not static. You're not going to lock in and stay at 100% for the next 10 seconds. That's not how it works, right? You're going to, for example, you're going to start off the fight at 50%, and then you see, oh, that person's 1 HP. You move up to 100%, and then you get shot in the head, and then now you're 1 HP, and now you're at 0%, right? All that happened within 1 second. You're going all over the place. It's very fluctuant. It's going to be constantly all over. And once again, this might seem like a lot, but you will be, if you focus on it and you get better at it, it will all come within the snap of a fingers because you just learned and it comes naturally because you made it a habit. So it'll seem like a lot to begin with, but if, especially, I'd recommend especially Reinhardt focusing on it, but some of you other guys can do it too. But just keep it in mind, and then you will get better and better at noticing this stuff. Now, additionally, know that all of these different things are interplaying with one another. You're not just going to have an advantage; you're also going to have disadvantages along with the advantages, along with the lack of resources. So, in the fight, you might be I don't know. Let's look through an example here, right, where we see all these interplaying, right? So, come back here. This will make it easy. So we come in, right? We're in this fight. I don't know. We can take a snapshot from right around here, right? So currently, it is a 4 versus 3. That's the current fight. They're going to get their players back sooner. They have the spawn advantage. That's a big advantage. Reinhardt's half HP. That's a big advantage. Probably right now, they're not, but they're also not gonna be able to kill you instantly. So there's no reason to fully back out. So right now, I'd be maybe playing a bit passive. I'd maybe be at like a 50%. We have the player advantage, but they have the spawn advantage. That sort of idea. All right. So again, these are interplaying with one another. It's kind of so as a team, we should maybe be about neutral. We're just kind of playing a little bit. We're right in the middle, seeing where the fight's gonna go. Right. See what else happens. Okay, we get our player back, right? So now it's a 5v 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we're currently even. Do they have additional advantages? Okay, well they still have close spawn, but we have most of our team with us. We have 5 players. Ultimates, they have 1, 2, 3, almost 4 and 5, but then we also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So we're even on ults, right? Abilities, I'd probably say we're probably pretty even. Positioning wise, I don't know why we're so far back. Because we're, like I said, we're even right now. We probably should be like up on cart because that would give us better positioning and to be able to push them from because we're kind of again sitting far back here when they're on the spam. Then yeah, so like right now, overall we're pretty even. But notice how we're backing up, even though we're even though we're kind of right in the middle where we should be, still doing stuff, we're kind of all backing out, especially Reinhardt, I would say, right? Because again, Reinhardt, you're the leader, you're directing your team, you're the conductor, which is funny because he has the skin, but you're um, aligning everybody to be on the same page with the aggression, and then when Reinhardt backs up, that means everybody wants to back up, so Reinhardt kind of gives up the space, and then they take the space, and then we get a pick, so now it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're about to get our player back. We're actually now, I would say, even at an advantage. I'd probably say you guys are like, or I guess yeah, you guys are at an advantage. So you guys now should maybe be more like 55% or so, right? Something along those lines. Yeah, we're still kind of really far back.
Helden sterben nicht.
They start popping a lot of ults. That's fine. That is a uh example of it, I don't know. That's another example where you can start play a little bit more passive. Might have to make another category for that. I guess danger. That's a good one. Right? It's dangerous, right? When there's danger going on, then you gotta also play passive. Right? That's another thing that affects that. So that they're using 3 ults, might want to play a little bit passive for a second.
30 seconds remaining.
Okay, but now notice Bastion ults ended. It's a 1-2-3-4-5 versus a 1-2-3-4. We have more health. We have more. We have Visor. We have Valk still. We have Shatter. We have more ultimates than them, and we're a little far pulled back. Right? We're a little. We're still back. Reinhardt's still backing. Right? Rather than pushing, we got to pick. But again, we're just kind of all over the place, right? Reinhardt's over here. Zarya's all the way forwards. We're just not on the same page. So, therefore, communicate with each other, right? We're currently, I would say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a one. No, I say heavy advantage, right? As of the moment, heavy advantage. So therefore, you want to be playing as if it's a heavy advantage. Yeah.
10 seconds
Down! I've got you in my sights.
And the apple.
overtime.
Oh, do it, Chunk. Do it. Forgot I have to actually teleport to these. Oh, you guys are funny. Oh, no, wait. No, you're on defense now. I thought you were on offense again. They are funny. They're hilarious. All right, they're doing that strat. All right, how do we respond to it? Let's see. Okay, so we respond now with the spam comp. So once again, in the spirits of making our comp cohesive, Mercy works. Bastion works fine. Orisa works. Sigma works. Ana and Genji probably could be a little bit better. Genji is not a spam character. He doesn't do great from a range. Like if he's just sitting there throwing shurikens. There's a lot of characters that do that much better than Genji, right? You could name probably a dozen characters, or not a dozen, but half a dozen characters who do that better than Genji, right? Hanzo does it better. Soldier does it better. Kree does it better. Junkrat does it better. Pharah does it better. Echo does it better, etc. Right? Genji's just not good at that. So therefore, maybe better character you can pick. Now, is that this one character alone going to completely ruin your whole comp and make you lose the fight? No, but it's a disadvantage, right? You're putting yourself at a little bit of a handicap being non-cohesive. And again, you're now gonna have Genji. You're pulling each other apart. Where Genji's gonna want to go in and do things, and then now he can't, right? Or if he does, he's gonna die, right? Because it's not gonna work out. Ana, again, I would say that Ana's a very flexible character, but spam is her weakest composition. Now, I also imagine we're running Ana because we're on Genji, but I would probably recommend swapping up to like a Baptiste would be really good in this situation, or maybe, like Baptiste would probably be the best here, honestly. If you had one of the supports go Bap, you could also like run a Zen in this scenario, wouldn't be bad. But really just not, Ana would be more of a okay pick. So now we've actually reversed positions. They are now on the brawl. We are on the spam. So we want to be playing opposite to what we were doing before, which in reality is actually how we were playing. We were playing our brawl comp as a spam in the last fight. So this hopefully will work for us. Were you guys aware of that strategy before this game at all?
I think like two of us never knew that was a strat.
Mm.
And when they actually did that, I got to know about it, and then I turned, and they were already there.
All right. So not a massive deal because that's very honestly very not it's a niche strategy. It is something that you've seen before, but or like sorry, I've seen before, but it's not something you see all the time. So I'm not gonna dock too many points off of you guys for not like reacting appropriately. But now that you know that it's a thing, and if you see like they're on Sim May, like you might for example want to like take some different positioning, possibly like set up your bastion above point, like over here, and then that way, even if they do it, then really did it do anything, right? Did they actually TP? Did that do literally anything if you're sitting back here, right? Now, I'm not saying you sit here in any all circumstances, but once again, team comp dictates playstyle. They're playing something different. You're playing something different. You play differently, right? So here probably be a good idea if you guys are all positioned up here. But like I said, not gonna dock too many points because this was a unexpected play if you're not expecting it.
Defense matrix activated. Routing power to forward. Route.
So, um, when they are on this TP comp, make sure that we are communicating who and where they are TPing. Make sure that we are looking to I guess you could approach this kind of in like two different ways. You could either play so split up that even if they TP at somebody, they're only getting one person, and then that way everybody else just melts them as they're TPing on said one person. That's one way to go about it. You also can play more closer together, and this also is probably going to depend on what comp you're running. If you're running a spam or a dive, then it'll probably work much better if you stay far away from each other. Whereas if you're on a brawl, then you probably want to be on top of each other, right? Here, once again, we're kind of like on a hybrid-esque, right? You have Farah, who is spam and dive, and Genji, who's brawl and dive, and Mercy, who's spam and dive, and Reinhardt, who's brawl, and Roadhog, who's spam, and Ana, who's brawl and dive. So you can kind of see where you're getting into a little bit of everything, and then therefore you're not operating under a direct play style. Everybody's going to be doing more so their own thing. And then that just, like I said, if you're running kind of, there are hybrid compositions you can run, but if you're running a hybrid comp in this sense, it's really just everybody, it's inherently a slight negative, right? So cohesive team comps, once again. Now, let's see what happens. They are on, yeah, that made sense.
Defense matrix activated. I'm gonna have to shoot you down.
Der Kampf ist noch nicht vorbei.
ATM 좀 올려볼까?
冻住，不许走！
Okay. I'm not seeing this in every fight, but I'm seeing it in maybe like half of them or so, or maybe even a little bit less than half. But in any case, it's still important to go over. Note that generally speaking, ultimates that are used first generally get more value than ultimates that are used second. So let me explain that. Let's say, for example, they have a male and we have a male, right? They come in and they mail first. They freeze you all up. They shoot you. You lose half your team. Right? So now it's like a 3v6. So that initial ultimate got them that advantage, which now means if you come in and mailed, Okay, you freeze them all, you get the same value, you freeze the same amount of people, but now you have half as many people to actually shoot at them, and you actually don't get as much value, and then they end up winning the fight. Additionally, they could end up just flat up winning the fight off of using their ultimates before you even get a chance to use yours, or they could even end up killing you before you get a chance to use yours, right? So, like I said, not any and all situations, but generally speaking, ults that are used first get more value than ults that are used second. There are exceptions with a couple ultimates, like defensive ultimates, right? Like Lucio beat. You don't want to use that to begin the fight in a lot of cases. That's a reactive ultimate. But in a lot of other cases, you want to be ulting first. So you could be looking to, in this situation, use Blade sooner, use Valk sooner, right? Those types of things, and then that can get you value sooner, and therefore maybe win this fight before they get a chance to freeze you all and then mow you down with Bapple. And then this has happened in a couple fights so far. So just generally speaking, also if not I guess also just in terms of habits of like when should ult timings be happening, generally speaking, the best time to use your ultimate is at the very beginning of a fight, right? Where they're using it right now. This is the start of the fight. That's the best time to be using your ultimate. And then it's okay to use your ultimate during mid fights. And then end of fights, it's situational. And then in between fights, very rarely will you ever want to use it in between fights, right? And also just make sure you're not ulting too early because you don't want to ult before the fight begins, right? You want to wait for the start. So that's just some general ultimate advice. Because notice that exactly what I said happens. They come in, they freeze everyone, they kill everybody. We Valk. Okay, well now what's Valk gonna do? Who are you gonna damage with? What's it gonna accomplish? Now additionally, yeah. Additionally, as another concept, I haven't noticed you guys. Honestly, you guys have been pretty solid with this. Not a major point, so I want to clarify that. But something I just saw there, and then that kind of attributed to this, and then maybe like some here and there off situations. So this is related to what we were talking about with aggression scaling, but this is basically how to tell whether or not you've won or lost the fight. And you tell that based off of what is happening in kill feed and in general the fight. Um, when it comes to watching kill feed, you're gonna watch what advantages and disadvantages do we have, right? Who's up, who's down. Generally speaking, if you are up or down, 1 to 2 people, that is an advantage or a disadvantage. We talked about this with the aggression scaling. 2 to 3 is up or down. 2 to 3 is a won or a lost fight, right? That's the breaking point in a lot of situations. Um, in won fights, you play extra aggressive. In lost fights, you look to get out if you can. If you can't, you let them kill you, and then that way you don't stagger yourself. And then additionally, don't use ultimates in won or lost fights because you just wastes it. If it's already lost, then it's not going to change the fact that you lost. If it's already won, then it's really not necessary. It's just overkill. And then note that um, a lot of other things have an impact on winning or losing, right? Those other advantages and disadvantages that we talked about. So that's why 2 is the middleman, and we actually talked about this thing earlier, right? 2 is the middle between between it goes 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3, right? 2 is the middle because all those other things go into whether or not you're winning or losing, right? So yeah, that's about it. Here, we lose the fight, and then we Valk after we've lost the fight, which just wastes the ultimate. Not a massive, it's one ultimate, but that can usually repeat, right? So we're down 2 people, no additional advantage, lost fight, right? Also, Genji's 1 HP and about to die, right? So this is a lost fight. Again, this is communication-wise anybody on your team can call this. So this is not Mercy's fault alone. If it's a ranked environment, then yes, it's Mercy's fault, right? But and everybody on your team can be calling this out, right? Just one person notices we've lost the fight, they can say, get out, no soul souls, we've lost, right? When you're communicating it, you're looking to communicate 3 things, right? Or 2.5, right? 1, don't use ultimates. 2, the Y, so it's the what, the why, and then the second why, right? There's the what, which is don't use ultimates. There's the why, which is because we've lost the fight, and then there's the second why, which is we've lost the fight because we're down two people, or because we're down three people, or because we're down four people, right? Etc. So that would sound something along the lines of no souls, we've lost the fight. Everyone look to get out, right? We're down two people, right? Communicate. Repeat the things you're saying, right? When you make a call out, in a lot of cases you repeat it. That makes it stick to people's memories more. It kind of gets people to pay attention and listen to you. So that's what I'd recommend. Just everybody pay attention, everybody look, and then that'll get you again a lot more on the same page, and not wasting ultimates and knowing when to be what aggression. Make sure you're going out and contesting there, Reinhardt, right? Um, it's possible, yeah. So in any case, right? No matter what, contest here, right? Firstly, know that we're up two people, right? So let's think through the thing that we just talked about, right? When it comes to paying attention to all these different things. This is walking into a fight that you have already won. You guys have already won this fight before it even begins. You guys are up two people with no additional disadvantage, right? They have two players all the way back in spawn. Therefore, you might not even need to use ultimates. Here, I would keep ultimates on the back burner. Use them as needed, right? If they start getting kills, then use your ultimates to flip it back, right? If you feel like you need it, right? Additionally, your aggression as an entire team, especially Reinhardt here because he's sitting back, as an entire team, your team aggression should probably be like an 85, right? Something like that, where you're running into them. Because if you don't, if you sit around, that gives them more time to kill you, more time to flip and get an advantage, more opportunities to look for a big shatter, more time for their teammates to walk back from spawn. The longer you take to capitalize on an advantage, the more time you give them to find an advantage and flip it on your head, right? So here, aggression, I would say mainly with Reinhardt, but then even just as a team is a little bit out of whack, because we're using Blade here, which maybe isn't necessary. Where Reinhardt should be the one touching, not Lucio. Lucio's gonna, if Lucio's the one who needs to touch, then Reinhardt swings on him twice and he dies, right? Or three times, right, and he dies. So therefore, Lucio does not want to be touching. Reinhardt wants to be touching, and Reinhardt could have touched very easily. So here it's just a couple things that are all out of whack. They shatter. We barrage, right? Once again, like, I mean, probably don't need barrage because it's a 1, 2, 3, 4. Even with them getting Lucio, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 2, right? With us having a little bit decently closer spawns as well, right? Or sorry, they had 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 3. So, yep.
Dein Schutzengel ist da.
So just to check, since I haven't asked in a little bit, does anybody have any other questions on? Because I think I haven't asked in a while. So any questions on like any of the watching of kill feed and whatnot? All right.
I think we're good. Yeah.
Sounds good. I'll also open up for questions at the end. So keep thinking if you got them, and then like it doesn't even have to be something we're talking about. It could be anything else as well. Right, so notice with the ultimate advantage that now we have 1, almost 2. They have 1, 2, 3, right? That they have available. So therefore they have the ult advantage currently. which is an issue for us. And then that just once again comes from the over ulting that last fight, right? So we want to make sure that we are paying attention to make sure that we're ulting, or not. Sorry, not ulting in that situation. um, Note how. Hmm, never mind. I think I'm good. Yeah, that's the main thing I'd say. Is they come in, they ult, they win. That's the biggie.
Boosters engaged. Forward shield. Routing power to forward barrier.
Okay. Um. So Reinhardt, and then also note here as well, because I don't want to sound like I'm singling you out and picking on you. Typically, when you're doing team coaching sessions, the tank tends to be one of the primary things that's in your face because they control a lot of the team play and the team flow. So if I were to go in one on one at any individual person, I'd probably find just as equally amount going wrong with their gameplay, just because it's harder to spot what the heck is happening with Mercy or Lucio. I mean, especially Lucio, right? Like, it's hard to tell what's happening with Lucio versus with a Reiner who's big and chunky and on your screen. So, once again, here, apologies if it seems like I'm singling you out, because I'm not. But in terms of shield management, make sure that you're not holding it up for random spam damage when in terms of shield usage, you have so many different things that you can use it for, right? You want to look to use your shield when you have teammates or yourself who are in danger, noting that being low and in danger are two different things. I can be low HP and sitting over here and perfectly safe, and I can be inside of their team and in danger, or right next to a diva bomb and in danger, right? Though note that being low does usually have an influence on being in danger. Usually ups the danger. Now that's one time you shield when people are in danger. You shield when you are pushing, when you're backing. You shield when you are looking to block ultimates and abilities, and when you see a bunch of spam damage coming through. But once again, like I said, when you do not want to be ulting, or sorry, not ulting, shielding, is when you're just soaking up everyday random shots, right? May icicles, Ryan Fire Strike, Symmetra, balls that are coming in, right? Is that stuff necessarily going to just kill somebody out of nowhere? Maybe, probably not. If somebody gets low, you shield. If somebody is out in the open, then they probably shouldn't be out in the open, right? But in any case, like it's watching, paying attention. If you need to, like if you see that the Mercy needs a shield, then you shield, right? But here there's just this large portion where we're just kind of holding up our shield and letting them spam it for free, right? Like we're holding it, we're holding it, we're holding it. We're around the corner, we're holding it, right? We put it back up, we're holding it, right? It's just taking so much damage. And then therefore, by the time this fight starts, we're already down our whole we're already down to what shield health is at half. And then that means that once again, that affects that affects our aggression scaling. That means that we have to scale down. We have to play less aggressive. And then on especially on Reinhardt, but on because like we said, you want to play fast and get in on top of them, which you can't do if you don't have health. But then even on any character in the game, you don't want to play passive, right? There's certain situations where you have to play passive, but you do not want to constantly be on the back pedal. I guess spam is slightly different. It's a different form of playing passive. You're still being spam is weird because you're still doing stuff while playing passive, but with Reinhardt and a lot of other characters, you can't do stuff while you're playing passive, which means you don't want to play passive, but sometimes you need to. Here, if we're wasting our shield, then we kind of force ourselves to play passive, and that applies to all of you guys, right? Like, so if anybody's don't waste your resources if you don't need to, right? Is basically the moral of the story there. Know that they're coming in, they're ulting first. We don't really have any other ults, but that just makes it, we're not gonna be able to do anything. Um, if you know that they're coming in and they have an ult advantage, they have BAP, they have almost Shatter, they have almost May ult, you have almost beat and you have Roadhog ult. So like you know that they probably in the situation maybe have you slightly beat on the outset here. Play more aggro, play to run into them and play aggressive because that can be how you pull out an advantage, right? If you know, because then you can start killing them before they have a chance to use their ultimates, right? It's basically the same thing we said before. In general, with ultimate, in general, generally speaking, right? Ultimates are used first, get more value. Also, generally speaking, teams that engage first get more value, right? Not to say that they always win the fight, but it's usually generally an advantage.
Time to raise my
The payload
Vine
is
mal
approaching
suyo!
its destination.
Vamos escurecer!
I think this takes a little.
Oh, looks like we got off. Unfortunate. All right, so we do got some more time. Let me get up another one then.
This one was really rough.
Yeah,
we did bad.
Okay. Typically when you do bad, it's not a fantastic game to review because that means that a lot of you were making a lot of mistakes that you already knew were mistakes, and you're not playing your average. Because if you, unless you're claiming bad to be your average, but if you usually bad means worse than usual, and if you're worse than usual, then you're usually making a lot more mistakes than usual, which just means that it's not gameplay that we want to be reviewing. I can go more in depth if we need to, but I mean we can probably just find a go because you gave me two others here, so.
Yeah, that game. I think we all know like what happened because basically the what do you call it? The Hammond and the Tracer were just like completely shredding our backline, and then we weren't doing anything about it.
Now
Yeah.
arriving at Lijiang Tower.
All right. So, here, note once again compositions wise. So again, I don't want like hammer on compositions. I'm just calling it because I see it and because it's kind of right there in front. That it's kind of not working super well for us. Um, Once again, if you guys, this really all depends on like how casual you guys are. If you're just all playing to have fun and you have fun playing your main heroes, then go ahead and do that. It's not a massive deal because everyone plays Overwatch for their own reasons, right? But if you guys are looking to like up your game slightly, get a little bit more of an advantage, you don't mind that much swapping to a character that you play secondarily or thirdarily. I don't know if that's a word, but if you don't mind, then you'd probably be much better off if you're running a cohesive composition that makes sense together. So note their comp. What are they on? They're on spam currently. I would say they're on a brawl currently. Because and you could on I see the spam. I see what you're talking about. They have Lucio who's brawl, Reinhardt who's brawl, Sigma who's spam, and then can play okay with a brawl, Bap who's spam brawl, Symmetra who's brawl, and then Junkrat who's spam brawl. Right. But then also note that this is a brawl map, and they are aggressing on you as if they are a brawl, and uh in general, the spam characters work okay with a brawl, but the brawl characters do not work okay with a spam, if that makes sense, right? So Junkrat and Bap and Sigma all work perfectly fine within a brawl. Reinhardt and Lucio and Symmetra do not work okay in a spam. So right now, they're on a brawl, right? Because of because of all those different things I mentioned, right? So they're on a brawl. Their comp is decently cohesive. I would not say I would say maybe the odd one out is the Sigma, right? Because he's mostly spam. Besides that, most of the other guys on it, like this whole comp works cohesively as a brawl comp, right? On a brawl map. Now, this is a brawl map because it's very close in quarters, especially this right room. There's not a lot of space, therefore you can run on people very fast, get very close, which is what brawl likes. Here we are running. What are we running?
I would say it's kind of divey. Not really. Kind
Yeah.
of.
kind of divey, but like a whole lot of a whole lot of nothing. Like more kind of like a divey hybrid, I would say. Right? It's a hybrid comp, but you have a lot of divey elements. So you have Genji, who's a brawly dive. You know, Zarya, who's a brawl. Diva, who's a brawly dive. You have Baptiste, who is a spam me brawl. So I would say, like, if you're Baptiste, noting that Baptiste doesn't work great with dive characters because I don't want to go super in depth on that, but most of Baptiste's kit cannot keep up with dive. Mercy is a divey spam, and then Echo is a divey spam, right? So really we're running a dive, but then we're also not running any main dive tank, so we're lacking a main tank here. So I'd probably recommend, like in this situation, if we were running a dive, might want a ball or a monkey. That might be a lot more cohesive, and then that would put you on a full dive. But then even in that situation, we're now running a dive on a brawl map. So note that that's also an issue. So swapping one character here makes it a lot more cohesive, swapping the Baptiste. So for example, here we can make this much more cohesive if we swapped like Zarya to Monkey or Ball, and then the Baptiste over to a Ana or something along those lines, right? And then that makes the comp much more cohesive just with 2 character swaps, right? But then also you run into the problem of the fact that this isn't even a good dive map. This is a decently bad dive point because of the fact that there's no room to spread out, and there's not a lot of high grounds. There's not a lot of room for you all to spread out and come in and pincer them from different directions and whatnot. There's also no need to travel long spaces very quickly if there's no long spaces to travel from, right? If everything's close in quarters. So you might want to be on a brawl here, in which case you might want to be on a completely different composition. And then I would probably say you would swap up one of the tanks to a Reinhardt, and then the Mercy and Echo would probably be good to swap up.
Get through this.
Lifting off. The objective is now active.
So yeah, they play fast. They had the cohesive team comp. They won. If you guys were looking like brother, you might want to take the fight to point because that is a lot more spread out and open, and that would be slightly more advantageous for your comp. Now it does look like you guys are swapping it up a little bit.
Clearing the area.
Okay. Do note that the Sigma and Farah and Mercy are still slightly out of order here. So once again, just noting it. I don't want to continue pressing on it if we've already talked about it. Okay. Once again, now this is a different Reinhardt now, but notice how you're kind of behind your whole team, not in the front, where the main tank wants to be in the front, not behind. Also, the main tank wants to be leading the charge. Now, um, that could mean that your whole team should be behind Reinhardt, or it could mean Reinhardt wants to be in front of your whole team, right? Now, if Reinhardt's going right side and no one's with him, then that could be because Reinhardt's not calling it. So communicate, say, hey guys, we're going right side before you even get there. Don't call it like in the middle of the fight. Don't push in and then go, okay, I guess we're coming back now and then going this way, right? That's not gonna be good for nobody, right? Not gonna work out well. So if you're committing down main, probably commit down main. Right, I'd probably say in this situation, Reinhardt's the one out of position because you're the one person going this off angle that's out and away from your team.
Get back.
And then Farah kills a bunch. That's good.
Clearing the area.
Okay, make sure and place it. I guess that's decent. I might just like place it forwards an extra 2 inches and curve to the right, and then now you have like this camera visibility on them, and you can see them as they go around the corner. Versus here, where okay, well I guess maybe you can. I guess you can maybe like peek it. If you like go through this crack, but a little bit less visibility. So not a massive deal whatsoever. Just maybe could be position it slightly curved to the side, slightly further forwards. Okay. So what fell apart there? Symmetra got a 4K. Did she just walk behind you guys? Is that what happened? Yeah, so it looks like Symmetra walked behind and no one looked at Symmetra, right? Reinhardt ended up charging in, right? So therefore, audio awareness, paying attention, general awareness, called outs, right? Call it out to your team. Make sure you're all paying attention. If all of you turn and look at Symmetra, then possibly this fight's winnable, right? If you guys knew this Symmetra was coming around the corner before she even does, then that means that you all live and then nobody dies and then you win the fight, right? So not to make it super simplified, but Symmetra gets a 4K there and just kind of walks up behind you guys. Okay, notice the popping of ults first, the initial advantage that provides versus now 1 HP, down a player. Now they just already and then they get another pick. They just already have that initial advantage. And then we still kind of have ults there. Okay. Okay. I guess let's simulate real quick what a quick run through of the ult tracking and ult countering, ult planning would look through, right? So we're coming in this fight, right? We're in the in between. We would say, okay, for this next fight, they're probably going to have a or like if you know that they're close to an ultimate but they don't have it yet, right? Then you can say something like they're going to be getting soon, right? Or something along those lines of they will soon have Shatter and Flux, and they have and they're soon to have Tire, and they're going to have their Sim ult, right? They'll probably get all that by the time the fight starts or so, or right as the fight's starting, something like that. And then they have Beat, right? So they have a lot of ults. Really, the only thing they will not have is their BAP ult, right? Then so firstly we're thinking, okay, they have that. What are we doing to counter? Okay, well we don't really need to counter per se Lucio Beat, and we don't need to counter Sim Wall. There's not much we can do to those. Tire, though, we want to just actively be aware of the Tire. They might try to combo. If they're a better team, they might try to combo Tire and Sigma Ultimate. So in that case, you can say, for example, all right, we're going to make sure for the Sigma Ultimate, we're going to stay spread out, right? Same for Shatter as well, but for Sigma Ult and Shatter and Tire, all three of those, um, they're going to have a massive decrease in what they're able to do if we're split up, right? If all of us are grouped up as 6 and they Sigma Flux, they get 6. If all of us are grouped up as 6 and they Shatter, they get 6. If all of us are grouped up as 6 and they Tire, they get 6. If we are all spread out and they Tire, they get 1 or 2. If they Sigma Flux, they get 1 or 2. If they Shatter, they get 1 or 2, right? So that right there is a way that you can just quite simply, just through ult tracking and communication, look to not counter their ultimates, but that would decrease their value, right? It's a way to come in with a plan to decrease their value, right? If you just say they have a bunch of ults that can get us grouped up, stay split, right? Additionally, you can say make sure you're watching out for the Tire, look to kill the Tire, right? Pay attention to it. And then it would be like your Rissa and your Reinhardt's job to look to block Shatter, right? So it's just a reminder for those guys to pay attention to the Shatter. Now, we have a bunch of ults. We have 1, 2, 3. we're gonna have less ults on them, and we're about to lose the fight. We probably want to use all of them. Do we have any combos? Not really, unless we try to shatter first and ult second. But I wouldn't say we have much. So ult planning, the plan would just be, okay, we're gonna walk in, we're gonna ult, ult first, right? That is not a ton in that situation, but in other situations there might be a lot to say. Oh, sorry. One thing you can say is to pull them together when using your DPS ultimates. So use Orisa pull, and then that groups them up and makes it so that your tire kills more people and your brush kills more people. So that's something you can communicate.
Vamos esculachar!
So you can be the one to touch, charge, get up to right to here, right? It's not gonna be dangerous whatsoever. You're still behind their, you're still in front of their whole team. It's not like you're charging into the middle of their team. So here, just charging to take that space would be much better. And then that way you can maybe be the one to touch instead of the Junkrat. Oh, and then we end up making sure we're trying to touch there because we end up getting off. All right. We are going to exit out here. Actually, I probably should have given myself a few extra minutes, but we're going to do a quick review, go over the main points of the session, and then wrap up from there. So, quick review. We talked about positioning. Good positioning is the. I guess let me go in order here. I mean, we didn't talk about individual ability usage very much, but ultimate usage. Make sure that ultimate wise that we are not ulting in water lost fights. Ult timing, ults that are used first generally get more value than ults that are used second. In general as well. Start a fight is where you want to look to use it. Mid fight is okay, and the fight is situational. In between fights is rarely okay. It's usually a no-no. Then moving on, you have, let's see what else is there. Positioning wise, make sure it's using cover. Good positioning, usage of cover. Bad positioning, absence of cover. Stick together as a team, especially when you're on a brawl. Though we did note some situations where sticking together is not a necessity, or even you might want to stay spread if that last fight is the case, so that you don't all get smushed by the ultimates, right? So stick together when you're on a brawl, generally speaking, right? Stay on top of each other. Reinhardt and Zarya, right? Make sure sticking with each other, stand on top of each other, make sure not spread out. Besides that, trying to think of what else was there. I don't think we talked a ton more on positioning. Unless I'm forgetting some topics. Moving on, generally speaking, make sure that you guys are paying attention to your awareness and your surroundings, and then also how that affects your aggression. Pay attention to kill feed, right? Kill feed, 1 to 2, up or down is an advantage or disadvantage. 2 to 3, won or lost fight. No ult in won or lost fights. One fight, get extra aggro. Lost fight, let them get out if you can, or let them kill you. And then, yeah, and that's about it in that. This pairs very closely to aggression scaling. Aggression scaling, you think of your aggression as if it's a scale. 0% is passive, 100% is aggro, 50% is neutral, right? Neutral does not mean I sit around and do this. That is not neutral. Neutral means I'm going in and I'm chilling. I'm maybe swinging a little bit. I'm shielding. I'm just kind of waiting for something to happen, right? But I'm still participating. Oftentimes, especially I'm talking to your tanks here, but then all of you, generally speaking, especially on like the brawl comps where it's a big deal, our aggression seemed to be a neutral of like 30% or so, right? Or 25%, where we just sat around a lot, right? And that wasn't great. That's not a big that's not very good for you guys. So make sure your neutral's up at 50%, and then scale backwards with disadvantages and with lack of resources, and then you scale upwards with opportunities and advantages, right? Additionally, pay attention to team comps. Press tab in between every single fight of the game. Pay attention to team comps because team comps dictate play style, right? Take a look at the team comp chart if you need to take a look, but generally the one that we were looking at was Brawl and Spam and how they operate. Look to have a cohesive team comp if at all possible, so that you work together, not against each other. And then additionally, change how you're playing based off of what you're running, what they're running, right? Play when you're on Brawl, play more aggro, play faster, and don't just sit around, right? Additionally, I feel like there's something else that was right on the tip of my tongue that I just forgot about. Yeah. So I guess I will bring. Oh snap, man! Now I'm having a brain fart. If there, what else we talked about? We definitely talked about more than that. But that's what I have for a moment in my mind. So as the main points, I'd probably recommend. Oh, sorry. As well, focus on the ult tracking and countering and the and working on the ult planning as well. That was what I was forgetting. Again, press tab, walk through that. Right, it's a process of elimination. What did you see them use? What did they swap any characters? And then name any characters you missed, and your team can fill in the blanks. Right, everyone can help chip in, but select, and then after that, think about what can I actually do to counter some of the more bigger important ones, and then planning, pick out what ultimates you want to use. Typically pick out maybe like 2 or 3, put some conditions on them, right? On some of them, right? So you'd say like, okay, we're going to use these 2 ultimates, we're going to combo them, and then if we need it, then we're going to use this, right? If you know they have a bunch of ultimates, then you can say, okay, they have 5 ults, we're going to come in and we're going to use all of our ultimates, right? Or you can say, we're going to use these ultimates, and then if they use ultimates, then we're going to use more, right? That might even be better, right? Again, put the condition on it. Now, additionally, just focus on comms, communicate. Communication is how you actually operate as a team. It's a major part of how you do things, right? So communicate pretty much like half the things we talked about, right? Call it out to each other. And then yeah, to put that in kind of in a little bit of an order for you of things to work on. Probably say number 1 thing for you guys to work on was probably number 1, I would say, went to team compositions, both in cohesiveness, but then also knowing how you guys should be playing and operating. So that kind of comes in at number 1. Pay attention to that. Number 2, I'd probably say it goes to like your team-wide aggression scaling and knowing when each of you should be doing what and when you should be going in, backing out, etc. Number 3 would maybe be going into like ult tracking, though. Yeah, this one probably going into like ult tracking and ult planning and whatnot. Though this is more like an accessory rather than a necessity. It's going to drastically give you. It's going to be like a power up. You're not gonna be like absolutely terrible without it, but it's gonna be a big booster if you guys do get this down. And then besides that, stick together and yeah, I guess those are a lot of the main things. Yep. So I maybe focus on it in that order or so. Do any of you have any questions about anything in general that I talked about or anything else?
Okay, about the team comp, is there like an ideal team comp, or do we just counter what they have, like that type of thing?
They're out of the 3 different team comps. I didn't go into it, but generally speaking, they act as a rock paper scissors in a soft counter fashion. They're not hard counters, but generally speaking, you have a slight advantage if you are playing a brawl against a dive, and then dive has a slight advantage against a spam, and then spam has a slight advantage against a brawl. So you can play kind of the rock paper scissors game, but I wouldn't recommend it in all situations because you don't want to be swapping around your whole team comp. That's maybe something to do if you feel comfortable doing it and you're in between rounds, or or you just use all of your ultimates, right? It's in between fights, but you don't want to be giving up half your ults to swap up your team comp. Generally speaking, it's going to be map dependent, and then also what does your team like to do, because you guys might find, like, in generally speaking, if you guys are a more passive team, maybe playing a spam just works better for you guys than running a brawl, right? Now if it's a brawl map, you might want to run a brawl, right? So if it's like King's Row, for example, is a brawl map. A dive map might be something like I don't know, First Point New Bonnie, right? Is a dive point. And then you for spam, Junkertown, it's a very heavy spam map, right? Because it's very wide open and spread out. So if you're a good dive map is Gibraltar, right? So if you can base it off of comps, you can base it off of your strengths or a mixture of the both. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, pretty much. And also, your opinion on one tricks. Let's say there's a person who's like a Hog, Doom, and Lucio one trick.
Um,
Thoughts on that.
Excuse me?
Thoughts on that one.
I think that Hog Doom Lucio. Firstly, I would note that really this ultimately gets down to what are your objectives? What is your individual as well as your team objective while playing the game? Are you looking to just have fun? Or are you and you have fun playing all those different characters or one-tricking those characters? Or do you want to improve, to climb, to win games, to gain SR? If you're leaning towards the former, do whatever you want to do. If you're leaning towards the latter or a mixture, then I would probably recommend honestly, one-tricking isn't too bad. Picking a couple of characters might be better. One thing I'd focus more in on is the fact that you're playing one character from each role, which isn't as productive. You're going to be improving slower that way since all the roles operate differently and have different play styles, and everything's just different on each role. So if you're looking to improve faster, I might recommend picking a specific role. But then one tricking isn't terrible. Usually I'd recommend though like at least having a second just so you can be a little bit more flexible. Honestly, it's just a slight handicap, but you can make up for that handicap by getting to know your character so well that you can play it against the handicap, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. It's because my Lucio's my best one, but we can't figure out how to like work it in the team. So I'm going Doom right now. My Doom's fine, I guess. But yeah, basically that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. So, like I said, if you pick whichever character you have whichever role, whichever character you have the most fun playing that you're best at, I probably stick with that. Other than that, if you want to play Lucio, like we were saying, brawl comps probably work best with Lucio, right? But I think you were saying that more so in the sense of like maybe you have already two support players or something like that. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so is there any downsides when it comes to knowing how to play multiple roles?
Like I said, it's not a downside, it's a slower improvement process. So having, like, not meaning to brag, but having 4,000 hours in the game plus, right, I have played hundreds of and thousands of hours on each different role and have seen those played in all different settings. I can play pretty much any character, any role to a very high degree, to a high level, and coach those characters and roles. Now, that took a very long time. If I was trying to climb and get higher, you're going to improve at a faster rate if you narrow it down by role as well as by character. If you're playing 6 different characters, you're going to be improving very slowly. Now, you can also do that a little bit more if you have more time to play. If you're playing 6 hours a day, then you can play more characters than someone who plays 1 hour a day, right? That sort of idea. So does that clarify a bit more? It's not a disadvantage, it's slower improvement, I would say, is the main thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Because just that was like my biggest problem. I had to figure out what role I want to play for sure.
Yep. Go off of what do you have the most fun playing? What are you the best at? And then again, what are your priorities?
Okay.
Anything else?
I mostly just play Genji and McCree, Soldier, and Pharah. Is there like any other characters I should play?
Um,
Or just
it,
focus on those?
like it again, like 4 characters is like and when you're focusing on it, just to note, it's you're putting a focus. You're primarily playing these characters. Doesn't mean you can never play any other characters as situationally or just for fun. It just means maybe your main couple of characters you're playing 80% of your gameplay on, right? Rather than playing this and that and this and that and this and that all on different roles. Now, to answer your question, which was like 4 characters, that sounds okay. It sounds like you're a little bit of a mix between a flex DPS and a hit scan DPS, which typically you differentiate just because hit scan translates easier into other hit scan and flex DPS translates better into other flex DPS. Um, otherwise known as like projectile characters, or just really anything that the hit scan player does not play. So again, that's not a disadvantage. It just is slower improvement because you're not playing the characters that kind of translate into each other easiest. So yeah, again up to you. What do you have the most fun playing? How much time do you have to play? What are your priorities? Who do you want to play? Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question. So usually when we play dive comp, we run Winston, Deva, and Genji. So I usually tell our Winston to go in first, and then I go after him. So is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it really wants to be like kind of right at the same time, but the monkey goes in just barely ahead of everybody else. It's like because you want it all to be happening at the same time, so like it's monkey then diva right away, right, and then Genji right away, right? Like, it all wants to be happening at the same time. But yes, monkey is going in first because he's the main tank. He's the one creating the space. He wants to draw all the attention to himself because he's the one who has the shield and the health, right? So yes, but it should be just barely ahead. Like there should be maybe a second of a difference. Anybody else?
Okay, so basically, the IGL of the team, should it be the tank? Because, like, he basically controls, like, the tempo of the game, or whatever.
Yes, like I
But
said,
it should be a
yeah.
tank, right?
Like I said, that's typically the default. Now it doesn't have to be. Like, for example, if you guys are familiar with Overwatch League at all, I mean, you probably heard of the teams, but for Philadelphia Fusion, as far as I'm aware, I'm not sure. This might be old information. But EQO, right? I think he might have even left the team by now. But EQO, he was their IGL, their fight planner, their caller, right? He's the one organizing all of that stuff, right? And he's the DPS player. So it's not a hard lock, but it's typically the default because generally speaking, the one who's walking in ahead of everybody is the best character to organize what you're doing, if that makes sense. So yeah, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, but I don't know.
Anybody else? All
I
right.
think that's it.
All right, sounds good. So, I am going to stop the recording in a minute. I will get that recording to you guys within like 5 minutes or so, and then also you guys got notes, so I will get you your notes in about 10 to 15 minutes or so. After all of that, this is particularly to Roketo now. I don't know if he's still here or not. But yeah, I'll DM him anyways with it. But yeah, I'm gonna go order Fiverr, mark the orders delivered. You can go mark it as complete and then leave a review. If any of you guys ever have any other questions, feel free to message me anytime. I'd be happy to get back to you guys over that. And then if any of you want either more team coaching or even individual one-on-one coaching, feel free to hit me up. I'd be happy to help you out. I'd very highly recommend going for it just because it'll help you rank up faster, help you improve as a player sooner. And then besides that, yeah, I can hook you up with a link to. I can even link you guys over in this in the Discord after we're done here to my Discord, or sorry, to my Fiverr where you can order from. I probably would also recommend if you're interested at all, go with the subscription. That's 20% off of your order, and then it's very simple. There's no downside. You can always cancel. Not that you'd want to. And then all you have to do is just order a session, click subscription, and then it repeats that once a month. And then simple as that. If you, for example, want to do that for like your team. That is now about it. Good luck with all of your climbs, and I will see you around. Goodbye. All right.
Okay, yeah.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
My pleasure.